Welcome to Save a Million Species at a Time. So just a couple logistical notes. Bathrooms are downstairs. We have refreshments afterwards. Please join us. If anybody is parked on the bridge outside, you'll be ticketed, so that's not allowed. That's by Somerville Police.
Yeah, there's nobody parked there, and I'll check again in 10 minutes, whatever,
Okay, great.
but there's no one there.
And no food, beverage is allowed upstairs, including water. Okay, thank you. Anthony Marr used to work on saving one species at a time: the Bengal tiger, the black rhino, the grizzly bear, the harp seal, the bottlenose dolphin, the gray whale, but now, in view of the fast unfolding mass extinction number 6, he has escalated himself to save a million species at a time. Rather than a resume, let me present a third-party testimonial in the form of the write-up for the Best All-Around Activist, awarded by Negotiation is Over. Anthony Marr holds a science degree from the University of British Columbia and has worked as a field geophysicist and an environmental technologist. In 1995, he became a full-time wildlife preservationist, which has brought him to India 3 times, earning him the title of the Champion of Bengal Tiger in the Champions of the Wild TV series aired in 20 countries. As an anti-hunting activist, he has conducted high-profile campaigns in Canada for the bears and seals, and has been to Japan twice for the whales and dolphins. He's the founder of Heal Our Planet Earth and the author of Omniscience. Whether protecting tiger reserves in India, risking his life undercover investigations of illegal trade in endangered species parts, challenging any and all forms of hunting, hosting a radio show, writing visionary books on science, philosophy, and cosmology, embarking on marathon coast-to-coast compassion for animals road expeditions, covering dozens of U.S. states, launching his 7th tour in March of 2010, or mobilizing scientific research to awaken the complacent to the imminent dangers of reversible ecological crises. Anthony Marr is raising awareness, effectively campaigning and blazing new trails for anyone skeptical of what one person can do alone or in strategic alliance with others, or what can be accomplished without a large bankroll. Look no further, for Marr shows what great things can blossom from intelligence, independence, courage, and unqualified commitment. And now, I give you Anthony Marr.
Sure. Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I want to thank particularly Steve Ember of Middlesex and Rosenband, and who put in a lot of effort organizing this event. And this is not the first UU church that I spoke at on this tour or on previous tours. I've spoken at maybe a total of about 10 or maybe a dozen UU churches over the last few years, but this one here is quite special because my good friends are here, and I've never had. Have you ever attended my talk before?
Yes, I have.
Well, then I'm so glad that you're back to hear some more. Now, this title, "How to Save a Million Species at a Time," you might think that it is an exaggeration. I think it's an understatement. I think that the Earth stands to lose far more than 1 million species in a few centuries if we don't do something to reverse the current trend of our human behavior. This is based upon My estimation is based upon previous occurrences in Earth's history. Now, let me ask you a question. When you're thinking about mass extinction, what do you think about? Off the top of your head.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. Everybody says dinosaurs. Okay, dinosaurs is certainly a very spectacular extinction event in Earth's history, which wiped out, that was 64 million years ago, and that wiped out about 50% of all the species on the planet, including all the dinosaurs except some precursors of birds, which became birds of today. But dinosaurs are completely wiped out and not on. And so you might think that that was the very worst one because everybody knows about it. And that one was caused, of course, everybody knows, was caused by a mountain-sized asteroid that came down in the Gulf of Mexico. And but sadly, that is not the worst one that has occurred. That was mass extinction number 5. The latest one before this one, this current one, was 6. The worst one was number 3, which was back in 251 million years ago, in the end-Permian period between Permian and Triassic. And that one wiped out far more than that number 5 did. That one wiped out 75% of all species on land and 95% of all the species in the ocean. Just think about it. 75% of all species on land and 95% of all species in the ocean, including 100% of all the corals, just to mention one or two drastic examples. And the corals of today had to re-evolve from rudimentary forms in the Triassic era, had to re-evolve from scratch until what we have today. And today, as we know, we're doing it again. Just one example, the most high-profile coral reef was the Barrier Reef in eastern Australia, and that one, 3 or 4 years ago, I heard that 1/3 of it was bleached. But then, just a few months ago, I read that 2/3 had been bleached now by 2016, and I dread to look at it today because I think that it might be 100% bleached. And bleaching is no laughing matter. All the corals have color because they have algae inside to help photosynthesize their food from within, and they also catch microorganisms as well. But if the algae is formed in the coral, it won't last long. And not just the corals. In that end-Permian extinction 251 million years ago, not just the corals were wiped out. Almost all of the phytoplankton and zooplankton were wiped out as well, and that accounted for a 95% extinction back then. Because if you destroy the foundation of the food pyramid in the ocean, then everything on top of it comes crashing down. Even the corals have to ingest phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, and the fish, small fish, eat these plankton. Medium fish eat small fish, big fish eat small fish, and the pinnacle species, including marine mammals, have to depend on the fish too. So once the plankton is gone, everything goes. So, and that was what happened. And that one was not caused by an asteroid. That one was caused by global warming, even though it was not anthropogenic global warming, meaning that global warming bulge was not caused by humans because humans weren't there before. Until very recently, until about 250,000 years ago. So we had no responsibility to bear at that point, but the mechanism of driving species to extinction was the same. It was global warming leading into runaway global heating eventually, and it was so severe that the global temperature within a few centuries since the beginning of the geological activity, the global temperature was raised very sharply by about 15 to 16 degrees Celsius. I'm not talking about even Fahrenheit, and that translates to over 20 degrees Fahrenheit in sudden drastic change in temperature. And that it is not the temperature itself which kills, it is the sudden change in temperature that kills. I mean, back in the dinosaur times, the temperature was pretty high, much higher than today, but the dinosaurs adopted to it in the long term and they just thrived in it. But if you suddenly change the temperature either up or down, you drive a lot of species to extinction, and that one really did. And that one was caused by the beginning, preparatory stage of the breaking up of the supercontinent Pangaea, which occurred a few million years after that. But at the beginning of it, the Earth's crust began to break up, and huge fissures began to develop on land, particularly in Siberia, through which a lot of greenhouse gases gushed, and that would be the equivalent of what we're doing today. That is extra global warming. Global warming is important. Global warming is, by itself, is beneficial. In fact, we cannot live without global warming in the usual sense, and that means without global warming, the Earth would be as cold as Mars, if not as cold as the Moon. And the temperature of Mars at night is about lower than 100 degrees below, and the Moon is less than 200 degrees below. So it happened on the Earth at that point that the sudden change of temperature wiped out all these species. And now at that point, I would estimate that there would be approximately 1 million species on Earth, and maybe more. So, if you wipe out, on average, 85% and 90% of it, you're wiping out hundreds of thousands of species. This time it's going to be even worse because the Earth now has more species than back then. The Earth today has approximately 2 million species that are known, and the unknown species number approximately 5 to 10 times more than the known species. So if you add up everything, we have between 15 to 20 million species on planet. So and scientists now widely recognize that this one, mass extinction number 6, if allowed to run its course, by running its course, I mean the human beings keeping on our course. Then if we have, say, 15 million species and we lose 80% of that, we're losing about 12 million species, or maybe at least 10 million species. So when I say 1 million species at a time, we go 10 times before we can save everything. And we cannot, because as we speak, we're losing hundreds of species every single day without us knowing that we're losing them, because quite a lot of them we don't even know exist. Science hasn't even discovered them. So this is what we have to fight, is this oncoming calamity. In fact, it's worse than calamitous. It is apocalyptic, in my opinion. And there is absolutely no justification, and I would tell the animal rights community and the animal welfare community that our species, has absolutely no right to drive other species to extinction, even one species. We have no right to do that. And if we are on course to drive more than 1 million species, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 10 million species, because of our current action, which is short-sighted, greedy, selfish, and all geared to short-term profit of very few people on this planet, where it's not even 1%, it's the top 0.1%, which is reaping all this profit at the expense of the biosphere. It is absolutely not unjustified, and we should really look deep into ourselves to see, why are we doing this, and if we're doing this unintentionally, what we're doing wrong. If we're doing this intentionally, we should absolutely destroy that agent that drives it intentionally. And I'm thinking about one particular person at this particular time, and I'm not going to mention his name. So now I have established in this room at least that trying to save 1 million species at a time is an understatement. We have to do far more than that. And what we're doing right now is not saving anything at all. It's just keeping on driving things down and down and down. So this is the current scenario. Now I'm going to present you today with an original system of science-based philosophy which contains a solution to this problem. Now, first of all, let me ask you, today, in this world of ours, is there any global leadership towards saving 1 million species? Any global leadership to tune our planet towards a sustainable, green and peaceful future? Is there any global master plan that we can follow?
The closest thing we have is the Paris Accord, but as we all know, that's very incomplete.
Thank you. We don't. That's just the thing. And so what I'm doing is to present to you something that I have originally thought about, which I have presented to the best minds I could find. That was about 10 years ago now. But dating farther back, in 1977, I was in my first midlife crisis. I was about 33 years old, and I had my physics degree in 1970, and I racked up quite a high student loan. And I did not particularly want to specialize in physics because I feel that I would be squeezed into a tight corner doing something which is very esoteric and cannot authoritatively speak on anything else. So I decided not to pursue a PhD, and I also wanted to pay off my student loan as quickly as possible. So I took on a commercial enterprise in which I was very successful initially, but then once I became successful, which was easy to do, I had to keep on keeping it successful year after year, and that became a real drag. And after about 6 or 7 years, I had lost all meaning in life and purpose. And the just going to make money, because by then I had already paid off my student loans. Now I'm stacking up money and accumulating material possessions and all that stuff. But after a while, I just lost it. So I went to Africa to camp out solo for 2 months. Well, back then it was a new age. So one of the key terms was, I'm going to Africa to find myself. Everybody was talking about seeking yourself. So I went to Africa to seek myself, and so very strangely, as of about the second week, once I've settled in and driving around in a rented Land Rover and just talking and sleeping wherever I could, trying to stay away from humans and just commune with nature. And after I had settled in that way psychologically, I began to really do unintentional lateral thinking. And so I had to go back to town and buy a stack of paper and pens and drove back to the wildlife parks and so on, and began to write down my thoughts. And every single day I filled in about, say, 3 or 4 pages every single day of handwritten notes, and they're all ideas that were apparently not mutually associated. It was just random thoughts coming in on a daily basis. And by the time I was done, by then, I thought that I had accumulated enough. Then I decided to come back home, and by then I had accumulated a stack of paper about this high, maybe a couple of thousand sheets, double-sided, handwritten. And so in the following years, I spent 2 or 3 years organizing all these thoughts, and I transposed each thought into a card. And then I shoved, and it ended up to be about 1,500 cards with 1,500 different thoughts on it, apparently unassociated, and I had to spend months and months organizing these cards into stacks and try to put them together in a coherent system. And after maybe 3 or 4 years, I finally succeeded in doing that. So 10 years after my African adventure, it was 1987 then, so I took my new system of philosophy to present it to the best minds I could find, to get them to give me feedback and to get them to tell me what they thought about it. And so I went down the West Coast. My alumni university was the University of British Columbia, and then I went down the West Coast to the U of Washington, the U of Oregon, UC Berkeley, and Stanford University. I would have loved to come east and talk to Harvard and Yale too, and Princeton, but I was not particularly wealthy at the point then. So, and then, well, you know, when I went to a university, the first thing I did was to go to the university library and look at the course catalog, and I, based upon the courses that the professors taught, I chose a number of professors to present these to my system to, and because of the nature of the system that I'll present to you, I approached all kinds of scientists, from physics to chemistry, biology, psychology, ecology, geology, sociology, and whatever else. And altogether, I presented it to about 40 professors, and out of the 40, I accumulated 35 accolades for this system, all saying that this system is not only, one professor said, vastly logical. I don't know how logic could be vast, but it probably applied to this system because it is huge. And so they all said that this system needs to be very massively publicly discussed, because one said that, you know, this is exactly a philosophical system that can meet today's needs, and it needs to be broadly discussed. Unfortunately, through the years, it has not been broadly discussed. I did my best to propagate it. This is one of the examples of my endeavor is to spread it verbally, and I've written a couple of books on it too. And this book here was the first one that I published. That was in 2003, and in 2003 I also launched my first Compassion for Animals road expedition, or CARE tour for short, CARE 1. And so I published this book to accompany that first tour. Right now I'm on my 8th tour, and everyone averaged about maybe between 30 and 45 states each, covering about between 5 to 7 months each. This one here is going to be fairly average, and so most of my talks to UU churches are on this system of thought. I also approached the free thought people, the Center for Inquiries, all the secular humanists, agnostics and atheists, and also deists too, in terms of the UU church attendance, because you know, I was brought up in Hong Kong in a high school run by Roman Catholic priests, and I really I do very highly admire the Jesuit priests who ran that. They were very sincere. They abided by the principle laid down by Christ, which is to live frugally, to own little. In fact, they don't own anything. They even the pens in their pockets belong to the church, not to them. And so I highly admire these people of devotion, but I could not quite buy into the Roman Catholic Catechism set of reality. And so I gradually departed from the Roman Catholic Church, but I still have a spirituality in me that sought communion with the whatever high entity they may be. So the UU Church seems to fit into this pursuit quite well. And unfortunately, it's very hard to get UU churches to host my talk, because number one, I think you need to to know somebody who is in the church, who is a member, if not the pastor himself. If it's a total stranger going to a UU church cold, you get a cold shoulder. Unfortunately, that's where it is. So, but thankfully, Rose is a member here, so she got me in here. So I'm going to take this opportunity to spread this message some more. So now, this is the preamble of it. But now let me say something which could be quite unusual, and that is that I believe that the solution, the master plan for establishing a green, sustainable, peaceful future on this planet is actually within you. It is actually within your body, to be exact. And let me explain. Your body. So right now we've got about, say, 20 people in this room, and this is a sort of a day-to-day term, people. Scientifically, I can say that there are about 20 multicellular organisms in this room. Multicellular organism is a living thing composed of more than one cell. We have quite a few trillion cells in the body, and so that is something that everybody knows, that we are all multicellular organisms. But there is another identity that equals it, but on a slightly different level, and that is that you are each a society. Your body, I should say, to be specific, your body can be said to be a society of its own cells. Just digest this for a moment or so. I can define society as, let's say, the body of Steve. He's got a couple of trillion cells. Each cell is genetically identical, but morphologically and functionally and physiologically diverse and specialized. And the way that these cells are specialized, they're first of all organized into thousands of tissues, different types of tissues, which are then organized into dozens of organs, and these organs in turn compose your body. And I have a term that you have to forgive, because I have to invent a lot of terms in this philosophical system, and this is absolutely the biggest term that I can present to you. Greater transcendence. Or IT. And if you can think about these two terms, integrative is how your body cells integrate into a single body, and transcendence means after it's been integrated into a fully harmonized system based upon two factors. One is specialization, and the other one is cooperation. So specialization and cooperation adds up to integration. And then by the integration, the entire society of cells transcend and transcend collectively into the city of Somerville. Now, so Somerville is internally diverse, but internally cooperative and runs very well. The human body runs 100% well, total harmony. There is the healthy human body, I mean. There is no internal conflict, there is no internal hostility, there is no internal need for each organ to defend against other organs in the same body. The liver is not going to attack the lungs, and the lungs are not going to attack the spleens, and the spleens are not going to attack whatever other organ in your body. So it is internally very efficient, 100% harmonized, and that is the basic formula for transcendence. So Somerville is a product of integrative transcendence from the people living in Somerville. And let's use a more... No, that's okay. So now, in history, when a human society began to form, the city, when they were formed, were once again individuals. They were not integrated with other cities. Each city originally was a city-state, with the city in the center, surrounded by rural areas and surrounded by a wall. And that is an organism, which are called a Scythian organism, based upon the word city. And they're all individual organisms, but not integrated with other cities. But after a while, back, say, about 10,000 years ago, the cities began to integrate with other cities by means of specialization and cooperation to form multi-city societies, and that becomes the first nations. So a nation is defined as an organism composed of specialized cities which cooperate to form the nation. So imagine a 5-leveled building with a spiral staircase running through the center, going 1 cycle per floor. So here's a building with 5 stories, with a spiral staircase going up it. And if we retrace the Earth's biological and evolutionary history, the Earth originally had no life on it. The Earth was entirely made of atoms and molecules, and so this is the foundation of it. These did not exist when the Earth first formed, and that was 4.6 billion years ago. And the molecules, through trial and error over a long, long period, that approximately 1 billion years, trial and error, some work, some don't, and eventually some of them that work became molecular systems with internally specialized molecules that cooperate with other molecules to form a molecular system, which eventually became perfected enough to be called a molecular society. And when the molecular society develops an external boundary, such as a cell membrane, then the first cell was formed. So that was about, I'd say, about 3.5 billion years ago. And this is the level of the cell, the level of the molecule. And by the same process, the first cell species also, there were some cells that were non-social, like amoebae or bacteria, and they do not integrate with other cells, but there were other cells that became social, and they do not separate when they reproduce, usually by binary fission, but stick together. And when they stick together, after a while, some cells would be on the inside of the mass, and some cells would be on the outside of the cellular mass, and so they would have to begin to specialize, and eventually became more and more complex, and given a lot of time, it became a cellular society, which eventually gave rise to multicellular organisms. And I have to use a big M, and that would be about 600 million years ago. And that would be the worms, the invertebrates, and the rudimentary vertebrates. And by the same process, the multicellular species, some remain non-social, and some became social and formed animal societies. And the first animal societies were formed by the social insects, not by vertebrates, and that was about 120 million years ago. and I would call this the big C. Unfortunately, these are repeated, but big, small m, small c, big M, big C, molecules, cells, multicellular organisms, and I just call it the C stands for city. So I consider an animal society a city. This is not my original thinking. Back in the 1920s and 30s, some social insect biologists studied, termite mounds and ant hills and so on and so forth, wasp nests, and they determined back in the 1920s and 30s that an insect society was a modified organism on that level. But they didn't move this idea far enough to come to the conclusions that I reached myself a whole century after they had come up with that idea. They called an insect society a superorganism because the insects themselves in that society are organisms. So, and that was the undoing the term superorganism, because it became very cumbersome. If you call this an organism, and this becomes an organism, and then this would become a superorganism, and this would become super. So the way that I overcame this difficulty was to get rid of the term super, but installed several levels of organization. And this one here is the nations. So this is only about 10,000 years ago. And this is the 5-story building, and on this staircase I can draw a line here, and on this side is non-social organisms, and this side is social organisms, and it will be the social organisms that build societies that become the organisms of the level above. And right now we're here somewhere, and this is completed, and this one is not completed. And unless this one is completed, we're going to be dead. And let me just draw you another diagram here. If you look at this spiral staircase from either the bottom or the top, you will see a spiral. And so this is the beginning. Let's say, I should write it here. This is the starting point, let's say, of the cells. And I have 4 terms for this: S, O, S, E, S, and this is repeated on every level when you advance upward. And the O, once again, I had to invent a few terms, so you have to excuse me for giving you some big new numbers, names you've never heard of. O stands for organism, but verbalize it would be organismization. That means the formation of the first organism on a certain level. So the first cell crosses from the molecules to the first cell. So this is the first quadrant, organismization, the formation of the first organism on a certain level. After the first organism or the first species had become established on a certain level, it would migrate outward into different environments, and in doing so, a large number of species from the first species will result. So I call this the speciation quadrant, from the first species to many species. And after enough of these species had been formed and then we converge into different environments, they would form ecosystems into their own habitats. And so I call this ecosystemization, meaning formation of the ecosystems. And out of this ecosystem, some of the species would become social, as in here, and so I call this socialization. And on this quadrant, the social species build societies which work towards perfecting itself until they become an organism of a higher level. So first cell, a large number of cell species, cellular ecosystems, social cells building societies, And at this point, the first multicellular organism is formed. So it goes up to this level. And the multicellular organisms go through this same cycle until they build the first animal society. So it's on here, the organismization of this. And then this one here gets to the organismization of the nations. You just draw one more. Now, where we are today is approximately here. This is, I'm sorry, we're running out of room. But this is where we want to arrive at if we want a long-term, secure, peaceful, green, sustainable planet. Is that the nations themselves form First Nation, the First Nations, and then it gave rise to many species of nations which form a multinational ecosystem on the planet. And some of the nations become social and begin to associate with other nations on a specialized basis, and eventually it should integratively transcend into a planetary organism. But we're not there. We are here, which is we have a multinational ecosystem, and we have some, I'll be optimistic and put it in here, some nations have become social and form international societies, but certainly not the entire world's nations of 200 some odd nations. And so we are right now here, we're certainly not here, but unless we can reach here, our future is dead. And how do we get there? Is what I want to talk about. First of all, if we do not get here, we're going to die. And I'm going to present you with another big new idea, and that is, this is not an analogy, this is literal, that this planet is an egg. Think about this, the planet is an egg. And as defined by biology, an egg has to have an embryo. And our planet has an embryo. Geo-embryo, I call it. In fact, if I have more time, I'm right now 73 years old, and if I can live up to 90, I would establish a new science called geoembryology. And I hope that some of the younger people can think about this and establish the science of geoembryology, because it is very important towards the survival of all these species on the planet. If these nations cannot make it up to here, the egg is going to be a dead, rotten egg. And we have not an infinite amount of time to work on it. We have a deadline, and the deadline is defined by a schedule like this. And if you want to work on this, you can even see that if you draw a graph of the levels versus time, then you would see that it would be some kind of an exponential curve. And we are faced with a very short time to be able to solve this problem. If we don't succeed in organismizing the planet by means of integrative transcendence, the planetary egg is going to die. And there are two ways that it could die, the fast way and the slow way. The fast way is by means of a nuclear holocaust. Boom, in one day everything's over. Or the slow way, which is by means of global warming, deteriorating into runaway global heating, by means of the methane time bomb. So the fast way would be by means of nuclear bombs, but a slow way, which would do far more damage, is by means of the methane time bomb. The methane time bomb is a term that is coined by science, not by me. The methane time bomb is going to be huge. If we talk about the atomic bomb, we talk about kilotons. If we talk about hydrogen bombs, we talk about megatons. we talk about the methane time bomb, we are not talking about just gigatons or teratons. It's going to be far greater than that. And it's not going to spare 1 square meter of this planet. It is a slow bomb. Once it gets ignited, it's going to take a few centuries to completely spend, but by the time it is completely spent, there's probably be not much left on the planet. Maybe we'd be gone as well. So, and that is how it could die. If it could succeed, we'll be launching ourselves into a very bright future. We'll go interplanetary, and if we are really good with solving the problems between the resulting living planets after some time, the solar system could become integrated into a stellar organism as well. So if we can do this, we'll be going into interplanetary, and after a long time we'll be going interstellar. Now, science fiction has leapfrogged way ahead of science. So Star Trek, for example, has come up with the term the Galactic Federation, which in my term would be galactic organism. And it certainly wouldn't be run by humans, I can tell you that. Humans, I don't think, can even go interstellar. It can go interplanetary. But going interplanetary will give us so many different environments to evolve on different planets and satellites that we will be evolving very fast in different directions on the different planets where we have established colonies, and eventually the planets themselves would become planetary organisms. And these would have to go through this same cycle again to get to the solar system being an organized living system. And then eventually the galaxy could do that, and eventually, even conceivably, the universe itself could do that. And I'm talking to universalists, so I think this would fit into their way of thinking. The universe itself could become an integrated universal organism. That would be after a long time. Now, since I'm speaking from a pulpit in a church, let me go theological in a moment. This universal organism, once it is formed, will have 3 characteristics. Number 1 would be, if you are living in the universe and the universe becomes an organism, you're living inside of it. So the universal organism could be said to be everywhere. The universal organism would also include all the knowledge in all the libraries in every single civilization in the universe, of which there must be billions. So the amount of knowledge it contains would be unimaginable. So it can be said to be all-knowing. And third, the universal organism would be immensely powerful. Just imagine, you are here, and amoeba is here. There's only one level apart, and we are infinitely more powerful than an amoeba. The universal organism, by my reckoning, would be 10 levels higher than the human. So the power it has is beyond our imagination. So it can be said to be all-powerful. Now, since I hail from the Roman Catholic diction, I can introduce 3 terms, starting with the prefix omni. All present is omnipresent. All knowing would be omniscient, and all powerful would be omnipotent. Now, these 3 terms are used to describe God in the Catholic diction. So this universal organism can be said to be a God-like being. But there are 2 main differences. One is, according to religious belief, God is supposed to have created us. Whereas according to this system, we will have cooperatively worked with other sentient and intelligent and civilized beings all over the universe to collectively create it. So we are its creator, one of its creators, not its creation. And the second thing that's different from the universal organism in God is that it is all natural. There's nothing supernatural about it. So I'm just going way out there, beyond the title itself. But I'll come back down on Earth after, some people would say, so what's the purpose of a universal organism? Well, if you want to go really way out there, science has already begun to speculate that it is not just a universe out there, it's a multiverse out there. There could be many, many universes out there. And all universes are mortal, and it would have an end date where it will either expand into nothing or we collapse upon itself in a big crunch, and all life in the universe would be destroyed in that process. So what's the point of life in the universe if its ultimate fate is destruction? But since the universal organism is all-powerful and omnipotent, it's likely going to be able to either create a new universe or be able to move the life inside of it to another rudimentary universe before this one is destroyed. And the same thing for the solar system. The solar system is going to be dead in about 5 million years' time, 5 billion years' time. So what is our purpose? What is the purpose of life on Earth? Ultimate destruction by the sun turning into a red giant, then incinerating the planet? But the same argument, no, it isn't. Life on this planet before it is destroyed can be moved to a safe sanctuary somewhere else. And it depends on the species capable of technology to be able to do that. So going back to the animal rights movement, there are lots of people who hate humanity. They wish extinction on ourselves. And they say that if humans are gone, then there'll be no human atrocity, and the earth will return to Eden. And there are even movies and TV series like Life After Man, or Earth After Humans. And the earth will indeed return to a state of Eden, like some kind of a paradise on this planet. But except for one thing, if we wipe out ourselves, it is inevitable that another big asteroid is going to come down. It is not if, but when. And when another mountain-sized asteroid comes crashing down, it's going to wipe out everything, just like last time with the dinosaurs, except this time it's going to wipe out all the major mammals. I don't think that if an asteroid comes hurtling down, that there will be any whales or dolphins left in the ocean. There won't be any tigers or lions or eagles left on land. So, thus, this is our purpose on this planet, is to safeguard this planet with our technology. What we'll have to do then is to civilize ourselves and transform ourselves from being a planet destroyer to a planet savior. From a destroyer of life on Earth by millions of species into a life protector against the incurring external threat. So we are valuable on this planet. So if we take the negative way and wipe ourselves out, we're wiping out a lot of other species by default when the next asteroid comes crashing down. So our only option, if we have any compassion for life on Earth and any conviction that it must be preserved, first of all, we've got to civilize ourselves, change our way of life, and convert ourselves from a destroyer to a savior. We are potentially a savior species. Right now we're a destruction species. Now, how do we know whether we're going to make this point or not? There is something very simple. I can give you one example. It's called a cosmic test. The cosmic test goes something like this. Our planet is given by providence a certain amount of fossil fuels that can kickstart civilization. But the thing is, the amount of fossil fuels on this planet is larger than the amount of fossil fuels that can be burnt without roasting the planet itself. And right now we're in a breakneck pursuit of extracting every drop of oil, level every single mountaintop and get the coal out, frack and get the natural gas out, and that's our current pursuit. So if we keep on doing that, we're going to fail this cosmic test because we're going to burn more fossil fuels than the planet can stand. So basically this test is for our self-governance, our self-discipline, our self-sacrifice, none of which we have currently going on a big scale on this planet. So we really have to make ourselves stop this short-term profiteering to using fossil fuels. So as you know, this nation is going back into that era when we have pretty much crawled out of it by investing heavily in renewable energy and so on and so forth. So we have to first of all pass this cosmic test. A more general way of saying is there is a formula, is that let the innately destructive commit self-destruction so that it doesn't go into interstellar space to pollute the heavenly peace up there. Okay? The destructive will commit self-destruction, and the benevolent and constructive will build a benevolent civilization that can be admitted eventually into interstellar civilization. And there's a lot of talk nowadays of aliens and UFOs and so on, and whether they exist and whether they are visiting this planet. I believe that they could be, but their visiting this planet is not for nefarious reasons, in my humble opinion. They are not here to try to conquer, they're not here to destroy. If they wanted to destroy humanity, they could have done it a long time ago. If they wanted to do it today, they could have accomplished it within an hour, I believe. They got the technology to be able to do it. What I believe is that they're here to observe and to record and report. In this galaxy alone, I believe that there are billions of planets in this galaxy, as well as in other galaxies, and I have a classification system of planets that are different from the standard classification. There are billions of planets just on this level, and I call it a level 1 planet, and that is planets without life on it. Of the dinosaurs, there were no animal societies living on it farther back than 120 million years. And then there are level 4 planets with cities and level 5 planets with nations. And we are one of the level 5 planets. And all of these planets that could go this way are planetary eggs. And if there are aliens observing us, they would be filling the role of, let's say, the tender of the galactic planetary nursery. But they wouldn't be here to help us. We would have to be tested ourselves under our own steam. If we are innately destructive, they would let us die. If we're innately beneficial, benevolent, and constructive, then they would see us this egg hatch into planetary space and giving rise to new planetary organisms in the solar system. And then they would, after we have proven ourselves capable of peace and sustainability and self-discipline and getting rid of our self-centeredness, our narcissism, then we'll be welcome up there. That's my belief. So, we've come full circle. We have come full circle as to the current situation. I've given you some abstract ideas as to how this master plan could be possibly the only one that could work. And I hope that next year I would be able to organize a UU church tour because the Union Church members are ready for it. Animal rights people, unfortunately, I have to say, they're not ready for this system. They're just too narrowly focused. Whereas Union Church members, they're here to search for truth, they're here to search for meaning, and I believe that this system that I'm presenting to you is, in my opinion, true and has implications as to our reason of existence here, our meaning of life, the meaning of life and the purpose of our species. Actually, the purpose of life itself is to eventually give rise to a universal organism. So it is up to us to do it. Now, can we depend on our leaders to lead us there? I know we cannot, because the highest level of thinking that our leaders engage in is nationalism, on a national level only. They don't think about this. They talk about America first. If you can read Chinese, it's China first. If you can read Russian, it's Russia first. Every country wants to be first. And if there are certain countries with enough ego to think that if I cannot be first, I'm going to take everybody down, and that would be the fast way to go. And we are certainly equipped for that, with about 70,000 warheads on one side and 70,000 warheads on the other side. And so we must lead our leaders, because our leaders are not leaders. Our leaders are followers of their own base. So the current leader of this country is following the lowest of the lowest denominator, and he's following them. What they want, he will provide. And that is going to lead us to a dead end with no good result, no good outcome for this country, if not for the world. So we have to lead the leaders. And how do we do that? First of all, we're going to change our own thinking. We're going to have to change our way of life. Pardon me for saying so, as a Canadian, not to mention a Chinese Canadian, I believe that the American dream has to be awakened into a new reality. You cannot live the American dream, which is pretty much essentially materialistic pursuit to accumulate as much material as possible when the earth doesn't have much to satisfy everybody. 7 billion people, if everybody want to live the American dream, we can shrink it to China. If all the Chinese people want to live the American dream, I don't think there would be much left in the planet for anybody else. So we've got to change our way of thinking, we've got to change our way of life, and we have to change our leaders. It's basically what we have to do. As to how we can do it, well, everybody have their own way of doing it. I'm doing it my way, and that is what I'm doing right now, is to spread this idea around so that people can at least think about it and at least have some hope for the future. Right now, if you ask most people how much hope do you have for the future of this planet, I would think that the vast majority would say that there's not much. So hope is very important. So my organization, the acronym of my organization is HOPE, standing for Heal Our Planet Earth. I can present it in a different way too. How do I heal the planet Earth if the planet is not ill? I believe that the planet is right now afflicted with what I call the 7 planetary diseases or ailments. The planet is running a fever, global warming. The planet has internal poisoning in terms of pollution. The planet has a death wish in terms, or maybe even a suicidal tendency in terms of the touch and go situation of a global nuclear holocaust, among others. So we have to heal the planet. We've got to, more than that, we have to elevate the planet into to the stars eventually, and there is not much alternative. So this is what I have to share with you today in a skeletally. This is grossly oversimplified. This book here is about 600 pages, Available from Amazon, by the way, for about $20. If you want to order it directly from me, I can sign it. Omniscience and the Human Destiny. And I have this one here, A Beautiful Life. I published last year in 2016. It's not even on the market yet. Beautiful Life is the meaning of my Chinese name, and I think it fits this book because it is an autobiographical account of my work and my life. And it was not my idea when I had my 70th birthday 3 years ago. Some people said, Anthony, you should write an autobiography. But at that point, I felt, it's kind of a narcissistic type endeavor to write about your own life. So I didn't do it for 2 years until finally somebody said, "Are you going to do it?" And I said, "Well, I don't feel comfortable with it. Besides, I've written other books and the internet is full of my writing. So what else do you want to know?" She says, "Well, it's not the same. I want it to be in a single package from your birth or even before your birth until today anyway, not until the day I die." And I said, "Well, no, I don't feel comfortable with it." And that person finally dropped a bomb on me. She says, "What if you develop Alzheimer's?" So I thought, well, gee, if I develop Alzheimer's, I wouldn't even know who the hell I am. Maybe that would be a good idea, for me to write down what I've done so that I know at least what I am. And my wife can read it to me if I can't even read. By the way, I introduced Shannon Wright to you, my new wife. We were married on April the 2nd in Lake Tahoe, and we're doing our Honeymoon of HOPE tour right now on my 8th Compassion for Animals road expedition. And we're about half through, maybe a little bit more than half through now. And New Jersey is a big place. I've always looked forward to coming to New Jersey when we were crossing the continent. New Jersey is the first eastern state that we visited. After this, I'll be going up to Massachusetts for a while, New Hampshire, and then after July the 9th, I'll be going down south to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. And by the time I'm done with them, I'll double back to DC to speak at the Animal Rights Conference in August 5th and 6th. And then I'll be back here. So if somebody among you want to organize another talk for me in August, I'd be very pleased to come back and do it. So this is about all I have to say today. Before I close, I want to thank you again for organizing this, and I want to make a plea to you. This tour is self-funded, and I'm already retired. I'm living on a pension, which is very low compared to Steve's, I'm sure. And Shannon has to quit her job to come on this tour, so we're just financing this tour out of pocket. Now, if I don't have any support, we'd be spending thousands of dollars on this tour. If I have to motel it every single night for let's say 5 months, not to say 6 or 7, at $100 a night, that would be about $15,000, which I don't have. But thankfully, people donate to me in other ways. Steve, for example, let me stay at his house for at least 2 weeks, and that is a huge inconvenience on him.
Not at all. It's
Not
great
at all.
having you. And you see how my cats love you.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I also see you vacuuming the washroom that Shannon and I use. So
No,
that's
I'm vacuuming up. When I clean the litter boxes, I have to vacuum up the litter outside the litter boxes. That's why I'm vacuuming.
Oh, okay. So it's the cats again, huh? Okay.
They run the house.
So anyway, my appeal is, okay, I never charge upfront, but I would ask for donations after my talk. So if you think that my talk is worth 1 cent, please donate 1 cent to me. You think that my talk is worth more than that? Well, donate whatever you can. So if you could, then my tour can continue, and I can give more of these talks to other groups. So this is about it as to what I have to say, and I want to I hope that you'll take this home and think about it. And the way I do it is to spread the message by writing and by speaking. You can do other things. You can talk to your children about it. You can talk to your children's teachers about it, whatever you want. Talk to your pastor here about it. I wish that the pastor is here so I could speak to him as well. But so before you leave, if you could make a donation, we'll be very grateful. So thank you very much. Once again, thank you Rose, thank you Steve, and thanks everybody for coming. Questions are welcome. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Charlene.
Charlene.
Why did you choose the metaphor of an egg? Can you be a little bit more clear on that for the earth?
First of all, it's not a metaphor, to me it's a fact. That all planets are eggs and some may not go too far, some will go all the way. So, to me, a planet literally is an egg. And I don't know how else I can answer your question than that I take it literally. Do you want to follow up
Yeah,
with
well, I learned in geology that what they know about my geology class, I was amazed to learn that a woman had discovered what we do know about the center of the earth. So, I mean, isn't it true that we don't really even know that much about the core of the earth itself?
Well, yeah, you're talking about geology, but I'm talking about planetary ecology or biology. And the geoembryo is actually the biosphere, which is on the surface of the planet protected by the atmosphere and nourished by the hydrosphere. So the core doesn't really enter this equation.
So you're talking about the earth and the atmosphere as the egg,
No, the biosphere is the egg.
the biosphere.
The biosphere is the egg, and the biosphere is enclosed by the atmosphere, which is I can analogize it to as the shell. The atmosphere, which protects the biosphere, and the hydrosphere, which is the oceans and the lakes and streams, is the kind of the nourishment for the biosphere. So, this is a huge departure from conventional thinking. So you just have to think about it. If it doesn't make sense to you at home, you're welcome to contact me on a person-to-person basis by email or by Facebook, and I'll be happy to discuss this in greater length.
Are you going into it in your book, Omniscience?
Yes, I do. And so my email is very easy. If you know my name, you know what it is. It's anthonymarr@gmail.com. Just my name at Gmail. And I'm also in Facebook, and it's Anthony Marr 001. So you just get right onto my Facebook. Omniscience is available at Amazon.com. And the other books are not available yet, but you can order them actually privately through me if you want to. And in Beautiful Life, I also have I would have a few chapters on what we're talking about here, because that's a big thing in my life. Even though I have accomplished a certain amount in animal rights and in environmentalism, that is my, I would say, secondary endeavor. My prime drive and prime purpose in life and prime endeavor is to propagate the system as broadly as I can before I can't do that anymore. So people will just have to take it or leave it. But if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And your name is?
Charlene.
Charlene.
My card.
Oh, of course. Okay. So if I hear from you, I'll be very pleased. Any other questions?
Just basic practical stuff. So this to me seems it's a big picture view, and I personally like it, and I'm into spirituality and meditation and being one and all that. It's almost a spiritual approach, but practically, what is it recommended that we do? I mean, we just keep fighting the regime and trying to get alternative
Great
energy.
question. Great question.
we feel helpless. I feel like I was telling Rose, I just sit there and cry some days. When it's a hot day, I'm terrified.
That's why I'm here. I want to stop you crying by giving you a kind of a way out, possible way out. That's a great question because I forgot to mention something quite important. I mentioned that in our body there is no internal conflict. There is no mutual defense system between the organs. That's why it's so efficient. You don't have to set aside protein and calories to have a mutual defense system among your organs. The way I look at it as to how this can be achieved, and I'm not saying that literally this is going to happen as what I'm going to say, but what I'm going to say now is that imagine that the nations become world organs, just like in your body, where there is no need for mutual defense between nations. If they can do that, what's going to happen? We're spending $2 trillion a year in military spending in the world. The USA accounts for probably 1/3 of it. $2 trillion. How much can we accomplish with $2 trillion in terms of saving the planet? A lot. I think that's what we need. So if we can get the nations to adopt this view, and all the nations agree among themselves to gradually diminish the military spending, let's say by 10% a year, everybody cut 10% of the previous budget so that nobody suffers any relative diminishing of power. I don't see any endangerment to world balance if everybody cuts 10% every year. And that's hard to achieve, of course. But if we can do that, we're liberating ultimately $2 trillion a year, and that is the money that we don't have today that is needed to solve environmental problems. Right now there's just no money to solve environmental problems. We're just causing it, we're not solving anything. And when I say this, if there's anybody in this audience with military personnel in your family, you don't have to worry about this system, because I'm not talking about laying off military personnel. I'm talking about retraining military personnel from the mindset of killing people to the mindset of saving humanity. They can be retrained. All the military today, the leading ones, are all highly sophisticated. Even the foot soldiers have to have a certain amount of education and highly technologized. So it's very easy to retrain the military personnel into a planetary saving force, and the current military industrial complex can be transformed into making environmental machines to save the planet. I think ultimately, and I think this is going to be controversial, is that we cannot save the planet without ultimately doing geoengineering in a big way. Why? Because even if we have stopped burning fossil fuels yesterday, we're not going to stop the planet from warming up, because the CO2 is already in the atmosphere in huge amounts, in the ocean, raising the ocean temperature, raising the ocean acidity, and the ocean acidity is already destroying the corals as well as the planktons. And if we do that, extinction number three is going to be repeated. So there's a lot of technology that we need to develop and to employ to achieve the end that we need. So geoengineering is controversial because it can be misused in destructive ways. But on the other hand, we cannot do without it ultimately. As I just mentioned, even if we do use nothing but renewable energy, the Earth is going to keep on warming up. And one last thing too, if I may, just a little bit more time, latent heat. How many people have heard of latent heat? Steve has. Latent heat means hidden heat. Hidden means the amount of heat entering the system is not registered in terms of a temperature rise. That is why it's hidden. And how does it work? Let's say if you go to a bar and you have a cold drink with ice cubes in it, when do you think that drink is going to begin to warm up? When the ice is melted. The same thing if you have a pot of ice and you put it on the stove and you turn on the stove, dump a lot of ice cubes in it and you stir it with a thermometer and monitor the temperature every 30 seconds or so. The same thing. The temperature of the water in the pot would not rise until all the ice is melted. And then the temperature would shoot up steeply until the boiling point, and then it was level again at the boiling point until all the water has evaporated, and the pot will then rise in temperature to the temperature of the stove. So, but we're not talking about evaporation, we're talking about melting of ice. To quantify it, it takes 80 calories to melt 1 gram of ice without raising the temperature. 80 kilometers per gram of ice to melt a gram of ice without raising the temperature. And that's latent heat. And just imagine how many grams there are of ice having been melted and still to be melted. According to one source, we have 5 million cubic miles of ice still to be melted, so it's a huge amount to be melted, and it gives us a sense of false security because the temperature is not shooting up the way it should. But once the ice is gone, the temperature goes steeply up. Just imagine the Arctic Ocean as this huge pot of ice. And the Arctic Ocean is going to be ice-free in a couple of decades.
Yeah, sure.
And then the Arctic Ocean is going to be shooting up in temperature just like that pot of ice. And the Arctic Ocean is going to be hugely influential in the Northern Hemisphere's climate. And especially after the Greenland ice has melted and all the 10,000 glaciers in the Himalayas have melted, all the glaciers are melting and absorbing latent heat, so we're not, even though we're breaking temperature records, it should be much, much steeper. But because of the ice, which is basically the planet's air conditioning system, it is still being cooled by the ice melting. But if Greenland's ice goes and the Antarctic ice sheet melts, the planet is going to roast very, very fast. It won't affect us. We're not going to live long enough, but if we really love our children, we're going to do it for them. We're being a huge hypocrite because I believe that parental love is probably the purest and strongest love that human beings can survive, can experience. And I believe everybody when they say they love our children, but if they look farther, we have to make some sacrifices for them. We cannot live in the way we want and have our luxury at the expense of their need in the future. We cannot go for our own personal luxury and comfort at the expense of huge suffering farther down the road. So we're going to do it for them. And we've also got to do it for the animals because we all love people in the animal rights movement, even though I believe that they're short-sighted, most of them, and narrowly focused. They, I believe, do love animals, and if they do, they better take a look at this and begin to broaden their scope of thinking and teaching. So it's a huge task, and I'm not sure that we can do it really. But we've got to do it. We've got to do it for our kids, even if we don't believe that ultimately it's going to succeed. We have to try our best, and I'm doing something, and I hope that. And everybody here is to seek truth, and what do you seek truth for? It is to chart out the best route of action based upon the new understanding. So that's what I hope will happen, but I don't think we have all that much time. In fact, we have very little time. And the time that we have, the deadline would be if our demand for resources go up like this and the resources go down like this, and the intersection point is the dead end, is the deadline. So we've got to beat this deadline. We don't have too much time to do it. So we've got to do our best. I know this is a huge thing to absorb, so if you come up with questions later, just send it to me and I'll answer it one by one in detail.
Anthony,
Yes,
as
sir.
you mentioned about the what I call the ecosystems of the body, you have, of course, another way of looking at it, but you're saying that they're in harmony, that they don't attack each other. But consider how many people now suffer from autoimmune diseases, and in that case, the body is basically attacking itself.
Yeah.
So I see that as analogous to your point about, or at least how we could be thinking about the nations themselves now instead of being in harmony,
Right.
which would be the normal, natural, intelligent thing to do. But of course, we're attacking each other, having all these stupid militaries and wars and insurrection. So I see that the same way, and I wondered if you had any particular insight into that.
Yeah, what I did stress the word healthy. In a healthy human being, so no autoimmune disease. In a healthy, let's say newborn baby, a totally healthy child, it would be pretty much 100% internal harmony. If you begin to develop illnesses and so on and so forth, then it becomes to do that. And autoimmune would be quite analogous to what's happening in the world today, in the macro scale. And then, if your body gets ill, then you have to heal it, and the planet right now is demonstrably in that condition, so we really have